One of the things that's common to a lot of my clients is that they never intended to be an inventor. They just came up with an idea and found themselves in a position where they needed to learn what they need to do in order to pursue that idea, and probably even figure out whether they should be pursuing this idea at all. So you had this great idea, and the next thing that popped into your mind is, okay, what do I do with this idea? Who do I talk to about it? I don't know who I could trust. Can I talk to my friends about this? Can I talk to my family about this? Can I go to a company with this? No, don't go to a company with the idea first. But yeah, that's what you were thinking. You were really wondering what you should be doing next now that you've had this idea. You started searching the internet, looking for information about ideas and inventions and patents, and through that searching, you ended up here on this website because you realized that patenting the idea might be an important step for you, and maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but let's take a look at all of that together and really figure that out. Now that you have an idea, the question really is, what's the appropriate way to go about protecting your particular idea? Because under the law, there are different ways of protecting different types of ideas. And you've probably heard of some of these ways, things like patents, trademarks, and copyrights. Now, all of those fit within an area of the law known as intellectual property law. Intellectual, meaning the mind, property, referring to something that you could own. Basically, it's the field of law that deals with the protection of ideas, the ownership of ideas. So what we need to figure out is what's the right way for you to own the idea that you've come up with. So the first form of protection we should talk about is copyright law. And we'll talk about it quickly because copyright probably doesn't apply to your situation, but I want you to understand why so that there's no misconception. Sometimes you've heard people say, hey, that's a great idea, you should copyright it. So I want to explain to you why that doesn't apply to your situation. Copyright, first of all, doesn't protect ideas. Copyright protects artistic expression. Copyright protects things like books, movies, plays, songs, and other forms of artistic expression. And even in those things, it doesn't protect the underlying idea. So if you have an idea for a book, it's not protected with a copyright. The words you write for the book might be protected. And so even with the right subject matter, in other words, a book, a copyright doesn't protect an idea. So you can't copyright an idea. The second form of protection we're going to talk about is trademark law. And trademark law helps consumers not be confused about where their product is coming from. So when you go into a store to buy a can of Coca-Cola and you see a can that's labeled Coca-Cola, you can count on the fact that it's the real thing, as they put it, because trademark law protects your expectation as a consumer that a product labeled Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola. So trademark law protects anything that a company might use to identify their product or service in the marketplace. It could be the name Coca-Cola. It could be the writing style on the can. It could be the red and white color scheme that you find on the can, or that wavy line, or even the slogan, the real thing. Those are all trademarks of Coca-Cola because those are all things that if they were put on a competitor's product, a consumer might be confused into thinking that the competitor's product was Coca-Cola or somehow affiliated with them. So the key thing for you to understand right now about trademark law is that it might apply to you if the thing that's most important about what you have is the naming of it, the name you've come up with, the slogan, or other aspects that are distinct from the product idea itself. Or it might be something that we need to talk about later on, or that you need to consider later on when you're about to launch your product. So you have the idea now, and it's probably going to pertain to the next thing we're going to talk about, which is patent law. For now, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's more about the idea itself. And when you are ready to launch that product and you come up with the perfect name for it, we're going to want to consider trademark protection so that we can secure your rights in that name. And then as you begin to spend marketing dollars on promoting that product, that marketing budget will be protected by the fact that someone else can't just jump in and use your name. The third form of protection we're going to talk about is patents. Now, patents protect new and useful inventions that fit certain other criteria that we're going to talk about in greater detail. But what you should know for now is that if what you have in mind is the idea for a product or service that you believe is distinct from other product or services that exist, we're probably talking about a patent. So generally, if you can get it, a patent is the way to go to protect the concept, to protect the product idea, so that you could safely introduce it into the market and no one can take that idea. But what we need to figure out is whether it's possible for you to get a patent on what you have. And what we need to do is really get a little further into what the criteria is for patentability so that we can figure out if a patent would be appropriate and available for you. So the next video then is going to deal with the two most important criteria for determining whether you can patent what you have.